Hello and welcome back. So how many guitars are too many guitars? I got my first acoustic back in 1986 and my first electric in 1987. Then there was a little gap that went through to, the year 2021 when I got my first 12-string acoustic. Since then, I've kind of started these videos and working on them and, adjusting, playing. And eventually I decided I needed a new guitar. And that was not this one. I was on Facebook one day and I found a deal I just really shouldn't pass up. Being left-handed, deals come along very seldom. But I got a Seagull S6. It was a 2002 model, but it was one that had not been played by anybody. It got lost in a store, or for whatever reason, it was never sold to the public until 2021. And then I picked it up December of 2022. So I bought a S6 that had basically no play on it at all. Like the person that bought it off had it maybe out of the case twice, 3 times within a year. So I bought that. And then a couple of years later, I found this Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst. It's a 2009 model. It had a fair bit of use on it. There's some scratches here where somebody got rather exuberant with a pick, and there's a little ding down here where it took a couple of hits on something or other, but fairly minimal. It's a low-end, entry-level Art and Lutherie, and I bought it. So then I thought, man, that's too many. Like, I've got 3 6-strings, a 12-string, and an electric guitar. But wait, then came the Strat. I found a secondary Strat. It was made by Barracuda, very low end, $100. Facebook comes with a cord, amp, stand, books, 2 extra right-handed pick guards, 1 housing, 2 pots, and 3 pots, and 2 pickups. Couldn't say no for $100. Why not? Then I decided, man, I want to build my own guitar. And that's when I bought and built my Leo James Type TL guitar. And since then, I was going through Facebook one day and I found a Van Gogh 12-string, left-handed, $130 for a left-handed 12-string. Yes, it's a Van Gogh made in China, so it's low end, but $130. What do you expect? But anyways, I bought it, and now that adds up to 8 guitars. I don't need 8 guitars. I have carpal tunnel. I'm having trouble playing any of them, although I still enjoy it. Daily I spend 15-20 minutes with it. But it's time to send some of these off down the road, and so we're going to take a look at this Art and Lutherie first off, clean it up, double check the height, string height, and that. Strings are fairly good yet, so we're not going to worry about them, I don't think. But clean it up, give you the specs on it, and as I say, I just want to make sure it's in good, proper shape before I put it on faceplant. So that's where we're going to go today. Off to the bench. And so, of course, where we're going to begin is with the string height. Now, I am a finger pick, or not a finger pick, but I play just with my fingers. I don't play with a pick, so I can have very low string height, which I usually leave it at. So first off, let's take a look in millimeters. at the 12th, and we are high. That's like 2.5, 2.25, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. So we've got it set way high for what I usually take. So I think instead of shaving down the saddle, which is where we usually get our string height from, I'm going to tighten the truss rod a bit. First, let's take a look down here. See how it's sitting. It's got a little bit of bow to it. We can probably take a twist or so. So that's where we're going to start off. And how do we set the truss rod? So first off, what is the truss rod and how does it work? Down through the center of the neck here, there is a metal bar. It's sunk right down the middle inside, and there is a hex key in here that will, if you tighten it, because the truss rod itself is a metal beam that goes through the middle of the neck, and it's in this sort of an angle. When you tighten that Allen key, when you tighten the hex key, it's going to want to take that bar and straighten it out. And what that in essence does is drop the neck. Dropping the neck will, of course, bring the string height down closer. First off, maybe what we should do is go over every note and make sure that we have no buzzing as it is. I'm only going up as far as the 12th because I don't play up in here anyways. So as long as we have no buzzing, and we have no buzzing anywhere. So we know that we can make the first adjustment, and we're going to tighten the truss rod, drop the head down a bit, and as long as we still have no buzzing, then we can move on to the next thing. But then even before that, we're going to check the nut, and that is by putting the capo on the second and see if there's any real movement in here. And as it turns out, it looks like we have absolutely no movement in there. Well, of course there was no movement in there. I had it in the wrong spot. Where you want to put your capo is just below the second fret. And then we just want to check what kind of height we have there. And you want to have just a little bit of movement. This one's a little too low. But they are all very close, and that's what you want. You'd like them not to be touching, but just barely. Looks like the fourth string from this end, or the third skinniest string, is touching. But it's enough. I still don't have any buzzing when I go through each and every individual fret. So we're going to loosen off these strings and do our first truss rod adjustment. And as usual, when loosening off the strings, you always want to loosen the skinny ones first. And that, of course, is because if you take the pressure off the thicker strings first, you're going to put a lot more pressure on the skinny strings, and you're going to take a chance at breaking them, and we don't want to do that because we're wanting to reuse these here strings. We're just doing a setup, and you always do setups on old strings before you change them. I don't think we're going to change the strings today. Now, to bring the headstock down, we want to tighten the truss rod. So we will take the key into the truss rod. Hex adjustment. And we're going to give it about 1/4 of a turn, at which point we're going to bring it back up to, we don't have to bring it right up to tune, we have to make sure we've got pretty good tension on the strings, because we're just measuring the string height. So we no use in us spending a bunch of time getting it into perfect tune only to find out that we want to do another adjustment and undo all the strings again. So we're just going to get it to a rough tune. We do not have to get it into perfect tune. So that is enough tuning for what we're trying to do here. So now we will give the strings a little wiggle and check again for the height at the 12th. That's about 175 to 2, 2, 2, 2. That's still a little high, but over 2, and that's 2. So now we're going to bring it up to full tune. Okay, so it's now in tune. Once again, starting at the 12th, about 175, 185, 185, 185, a little over 2, and about 2. I think that's okay. So that is my Art Lutherie Cedar Antique burst. What we're going to do first off is take a look. I don't know if you'll be able to see these scratches in the baseboard above the neck here. Where somebody got rather exuberant with the pick here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over that with a bit of the fretboard oil. And the oil is going to seep into those spots and deaden it, because I've done that before with it. It needs a good cleaning anyways. So the first thing we're going to do is first off clean it down, and then we will give it a little oiling and just sort of deaden the marks there. We don't need to do the fretboard because it's fine. Yeah, we've fretboarded oiled it not long ago. We need to do a little cleanup around here. I think there's some wax maybe build up in this here little ridge on this side. But that's what we're going to do now. Cleanup time. And so what we get is a little piece of, this was old t-shirt material. Cut off all the hems and seams because the threads they use in the hems and seams are nylon, and with repeated they make them nylon because they got to be strong to hold the seams and hems. So with repeated use, they could leave markings on the baseboard. So first off, going to go over it dry and just get most of the dust off. So we're just going to wipe it down quickly first off with the dusting rig. And then we're going to clean the dusting rag and use my spray cleaner. Always spraying directly on the cloth itself, not a paid promotion. Now it looks like the bridge could use some of the oil, but in order for me to get the complete bridge, I would have to have the strings off it, and I'm not going to bother doing that, so we will save oiling the bridge for next time. Now I usually don't oil or wax the soundboard on the Godins, because they have a satin finish on them because of them being a solid cedar top. The solid cedar is a very soft wood, which makes it easy to mark. Duh. But a wax buildup will deaden the sound. They use cedar because it's a good resonance board. That's what makes them sound so bright and good. But at the same time, it's an extremely soft wood, which is why it easily marks. So it is time to cut a new square of t-shirt material. You want to make sure you don't use the same rag. You want to make sure you don't use the same rag on the different cleaners, because the other stuff was made to clean everything off. This is oil made to seep in, and not a paid promotion, blah blah blah. They obviously counteract each other, on top of the fact that also some chemicals don't play well together. And there can have chemical reactions which would either emit poison fumes or explosions. But either way we go about it, we don't want to do that. So this is not going to go well unless I put the applicator right on the board. So let's get a good coating on the soundboard. I would just do that one little spot, but obviously it would show, so we may as well do the whole soundboard. It will make it look beautiful anyways. Yeah, that's a little better. Because we want that oil to seep right into the grain. And it does. So now, although I'm not trying to hide those scratches, they will certainly be noted in the, if I do end up selling this, if I do put it on faceplant and it does sell, they will certainly know about it. I will show them, because that's only the polite thing to do. You know, I can say, yeah, I tried to deaden it with the oils to make it not as pertinent, but and yes, I'm doing the sides. Shouldn't have done the neck, but we can wipe that off after the fact. I'm going to use a pick in the corners here. And this particular Art Lutherie, well, many Art Luthieres have a glued on rosette. This is surface mount. Yeah, well, it will no doubt be a lot cheaper than doing all the inlay of a rosette, but it's a budget guitar, a beginner guitar, so that is it. My 2009 Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst. A good beginner guitar that's going to sound nice. It's going to play well. As I say, I've got the action down low. That is what so many beginner guitarists don't do. They buy a guitar and they just play it. They don't check it over to see how the setup is. Many times when you get a brand new guitar, it's going to have high action because they don't know where you're going to want to play. But so many beginner guitarists get a guitar and they don't do that. I did that with my original Yamaha. I played it for 30 some odd years with action that was way too high, which I believe contributed to my carpal tunnel. There was a lot of other things, hockey, work, typing, all kinds of things that contributed to my carpal tunnel, but this certainly didn't help any. I guess I can go over a little bit of the bridge with the oil rag. And there is it. Try and wipe a bit of the oil off of the neck. So now the next thing we're going to do is, we've done the adjustment. What we should have done before we bothered even doing all the cleanup was to check every fret and note for buzzing. And so there we have it. 2009 Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst. And I'll show you up close what I did with those. And here's how those scratches turned out. They're still noticeable, but not nearly as much as they were before. But there again, that's what you get for having a solid cedar soundboard. Now we could go over and wax it too, but why bother? Now the one thing I have noticed is that the peg on the fat E string seems to be sitting up a bit, but it doesn't go down easily, so let's not mess with it. So that's it. My 2009 Art Lutherie Cedar Antique Burst. So thank you for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and we'll catch you next time. Bye now.